What is going on, guys? Good morning to everybody. Well, happy afternoon now. I've been working all morning, so I haven't even been paying attention to the time. What's going on, guys? Let me know in the chat whatever questions you guys want me to answer on this live stream, because we will be going through everything with the new Patreon update and cheat sheet, going over specifically NBA stuff, okay? We'll be going over a little bit later in the week everything NFL related. I believe the ownerships actually come out for NFL today, so I'm going to be doing a live stream specifically on FantasyCruncher settings. Look out for our picks video, which is going to be posted, I think, either tonight or tomorrow morning, depending on when TJ's and Kevin's schedule match up. Very excited about these new updates that are coming out for our cheat sheet, because I've been able to kind of stream along some advanced stats, kind of utilize them into a ranking system, and then also utilize my leverage side of things, bringing it all together and making for a great experience, hopefully for you guys. Now, I get this is all brand new, so if you are struggling with even putting together a lineup, reading it, I'm going to be answering all those questions today. Again, in the chat, guys, ask any questions about the cheat sheet that we have. This is going to be specifically for FantasyCruncher settings and also for your hand builders out there. I get that we have a huge mix of customers and clients that are a part of DGF, whether you're a MME player, a single entry GBP, just a cash player, it does not matter. We have all the tools that help you succeed here at Daily Grind Fantasy, and that's the one thing I pride about our brand and just in general, guys. So again, ask any questions that you guys have. What's going on, Andrew? What's going on, man? You guys should be pouring in here. Again, this video will be uploaded to YouTube for the public to view. Again, they won't have access to the cheat sheet, so do not worry. You guys still have an edge against the field. I just want to make sure everybody can view it from Patreon. So this will be uploaded directly after it is done. What's going on, Showtime? Yeah, I haven't been doing Patreon private live streams recently, just because the NFL content has been coming out. I will be doing them more because NFL is brand new to a lot of you guys. A lot of you guys have been asking me questions, so I will be back on track doing live streams. Live before lock shiz for the public we'll be doing. Going to be very busy over these next couple weeks, but it's a good busy. Very passionate about the stuff. So let's go ahead and switch gears and talk about Patreon. All right, so let's go ahead and pull up the Patreon sheet here. We have FantasyCruncher. We have our favorite plays. Now, how do we throw this into a lineup? Let's just talk about everything. Start asking your questions now. You guys are used to seeing the leverage sheet, right? Any questions that we have about the leverage sheet, go ahead and ask now. Let me just kind of recap here. We have at the top, on the very left top side, we have all of our players. We have the positions, team, self-explanatory, right? The Vegas points, how much the team is projected to score. We have usage rates. So usage rate, let's just kind of recap real quick. The percentage of how many offensive or how involved the player is in offensive possessions. So let's just say Kawhi Leonard has a 32.6% usage. That means he's involved in 32.6% of offensive possessions in some kind of statistical category, whether that be a rebound, assist, points scored. You guys get it, okay? Usage rate. Higher the usage rate, the more involved the player is in the specific offense, okay? You obviously want to target NBA players with high usage rates, okay? Going to minutes. How many minutes the player is projected. The higher the minutes, obviously, the higher the ceiling. The more that the player is going to be on the court, obviously, results in more opportunities to score the basketball, right? Minutes mean everything. Minutes usage, great both. If they're high in usage and minutes, then they're set up for DK success. All right, you got to look at the fantasy point projection across the industry. That counts into Vegas odds, usage, minutes, over-unders, everything that you need to have into a projection. Okay, I usually pull those from FantasyCruncher itself or RotoGrinders, or I take the average of the two. Salary. You guys know what salary is, right? How much the player is on DraftKings. We're talking about ownership. The most important thing in all of DFS is ownership. Does the ownership make sense for the player? And then the most important column for all of our Patreons, as you guys know, is the leverage column. Okay? The overrating column. Leverage, overrating, same thing. Okay? How much is the player overrated based on his ownership? Does the ownership translate to the player's success? Does it make sense? Well, Kawhi Leonard right now is projected at 22.6% ownership, but he's a minus 20.6 overrating, which means he is not overrated whatsoever. Matter of fact, he's actually underrated, which means that Kawhi Leonard should perform better than what his ownership projects. If only 22% of the public has him, guess what? You need to take advantage of that. He's in a great leverage spot. You guys get that leverage part. A lot of you guys are hearing the same thing. I get it. Hang with me. We will talk about the stat metric here in just a second. Let me just stop and answer a question real quick. When you are doing a single entry GPP, are you going by ownership projections and just switching 2 or 3 players that are lower owned and the rest are chalk? Good question. I will answer that really quickly, and I'll actually cover it at the very end of the stream. That is based on contest size. 100% contest size. You need to take contest size into consideration when talking about single entry GPP. A single entry GPP with 4 people is completely different from 4,000 people. Completely different. You got to utilize the leverage in different ways when looking at those contests. Okay? All right. We should all be on the same page as far as the leverage sheet. We have all looked at this leverage sheet many, many, many times. Okay? The leverage sheet is everything when constructing a lineup. I get that you get that Kawhi Leonard is underrated, but how do you even construct a lineup with underrated guys? Like, do you throw too many of them in there? Do you throw half your lineup? Do you only use one? All those questions are about to be answered, okay? Let's switch over to the stat metric. Let's go over this metric. This is kind of overwhelming at first, but essentially it's the same thing as a leverage sheet. It's just countering in all the columns together and including ownership, and then I give you a physical ranking. The number one reason I have taken this route with the stat metric is because, like I said, we have a pool of so many different customers. We have players that are just focused on MMEing, which is what Daily Grind Fantasy is usually about, using leverage in MME contests. Obviously, you want to sustain income, and that's the only way to do it. I've told this to you guys many, many times. You can't get away with just playing one lineup a night and hoping that it hits and become profitable in the long run. You'd have to be lucky rather than good for that to actually happen, okay? Just want to say that right off the bat. But I get that there's a mix of you guys that play single entry GPPs, that play double ups, maybe 2 or 3 lineups a night, and that's fine. You can do that. Just make sure you're doing it right. And the stat metric gets you the stats that you need. It's basically for the stat nerds out there, okay? Help make confident picks by using a stat metric, and I'll just show you why. But let's go right back to Kawhi Leonard here and look across the top. We have positional rankings. We have positional statistics here. Shows all their positions, teams, salary, same things we saw on the leverage sheet. We have the salary ranking. So you guys will see a ranking column next to each one of the stat columns, okay? For instance, Kawhi Leonard, 10,300. He is 38th worst in the NBA, which means he is the most expensive. Yeah, he's the most expensive out of all these guys because right now there's a 38-person player pool. Right now, he is last ranked, which means he is the most expensive, which means I do not like that. I don't like expensive guys. You like expensive guys? I don't like expensive guys, which means I'm going to rank each one of these guys. The cheapest, 3,000. Canner is the first best, right? So I give those guys a ranking. And then I give a ranking based on the Vegas odds. Obviously, if your team's projected to score more opportunities to score, I'm going to rank you higher, which means all these guys are tied for first on the Clippers. All these guys are tied for 11th, 30th. You guys get the point. All right. Defense first position, self-explanatory. If that player if the defense he is playing has a 16th defense versus position ranking, that means they are 16th best against opposing small forwards. So, the Clippers playing Denver, that means Denver is 16th best against small forwards. That is around middle of the pack. I gave them a ranking right next to that, and this is how they rank on the sheet. So, for instance, Gasol has a very good matchup against opposing centers in Boston. I think I said all that correctly. Stop me if I said that wrong. Usage, same thing. Give them a ranking. Higher the usage, the better the ranking. Obviously, Kawhi Leonard has the highest usage. Same thing with minutes. Physical projections. I give all these a ranks. And then ownership. We obviously want them to be lower owned. This is where the dynamic comes into play. Ownership makes a difference. And then I give a final rank of all these rankings. If you guys double click here, it takes the rankings across the board. And then it gives me an average ranking. And then I rank those averages, and it gives a final rank on basically, if you were to ask me straight up, who's my favorite play on the slate? Well, if I take into account ownership, projections, minutes, usage, defense first position, salary, and also Vegas odds, my favorite play on the slate is going to be Kawhi Leonard. If you were to ask me that question, I would use that reasoning. I'd point to the stat metric, and that is my favorite play on the slate. So basically, overall, and I'm gonna break this down into a more advanced look on the sheet. Basically, overall, I'm giving you guys my favorite plays on the slate while countering in ownership and all the important statistics that you need for NBA. All right, I'm gonna be doing this for NFL. It's a blast. I'm literally creating the cheat sheet from scratch for each positional ranking. It's gonna be QB, running back, tight end, wide receivers, and I'm doing the exact same thing for all those positions. Guys, I cannot wait. It's going to be a blast. All right? But then you guys will notice these point columns, this point value column I've added here on the very right side. You're like, what the heck is that? It's not even highlighted. What good does that do? I'll show you guys how to get creative with this, because this is something that you can kind of utilize for FantasyCruncher. What I kind of did here is I made it relative. And the one good thing about FantasyCruncher is you can make it your own. You can make the projections your own. You change your percentage ownerships, your exposures. You change your randomness to your liking to get the lineups that you want. That's a great thing that FantasyCruncher offers. It's very flexible. It's easy to use once you dive into it. And what I want to do is kind of marry the two Patreon and FantasyCruncher tools together, because that's what it's all about, is how do you take all of this information and then translate it to good lineups? Like, that is the biggest question that we have to ask ourselves. It's like, yeah, I know Kawhi Leonard is the best play. Does that mean I have 50% of him or 100% even? Do I go overweight, underweight on some of these guys? He's only 22% of them. Do I need exactly 22% owned? If you guys... Let me actually just stop on that mark real quick. I'm gonna go right over to the questions real quick. Are we able to adjust the sheets by as far as ascending, descending order? Yes, up here in the column. That's why I gave all these filters so you can actually do that yourself. When I do it with the stat metric, it worked, but not with the leverage sheet. Yes. So the same thing. So that's why I actually created the stat metric. You can't do it because of this trend column. We haven't actually covered the trend column. Real quick, what the trend column is what the ownership should be based on my projections or on the industry averages. Okay, so the ownership for Kawhi Leonard really should be closer to 50% at 43.24%, and because of that, that helps me determine my overrating. So if you actually delete this J column, if you're not using it, because you actually have all of the information here, or even I think what you can do is copy this entire column and paste it as a value, and then you can start sorting. All right. So let's get back on track. So we now have our best plays on the slate according to all the statistics that we need. You can't convince me otherwise. The other player, you can't convince me Zubac's a better play than Kawhi Leonard. You can't convince me that Tatum is a better play than Kawhi Leonard, because guess what? I have the stats right here. I'm going to show you why they're the best, right? And you can just look on the sheet. But now I've made this all relative. Okay, I've given them a point value, ranking them from highest to least. Obviously, these aren't accurate projections, but you got to think about it from a FantasyCruncher perspective. If Kawhi Leonard is projected at 38 points, and all I did was backward rank these. I ranked these from descending order all the way to ascending, and then I gave them a point. If Kawhi Leonard is projected 38 points, and he's the highest on the slate, then FantasyCruncher is going to probably try to give me him. Or if I also really like Paul George here, and I gave him a high point value at 37, then they're obviously going to try to get that in. Lou Will at 5,800, they're going to try to force in a bunch of 36-point 5,800 salaries, right? So what I am doing here is I'm giving them a point value. I basically want a lot of Kawhi Leonard, so by doing that, I give him a higher point value than the other guys. And that's all that point value system is doing. So what you can then do, based on this leverage sheet and the stat metric that it gave you, is you can now upload points. These points, I am on autopilot here. It's upload data, projection. So if I give the point values to these physical players, I now should get a lot of Kawhi Leonard. I should get a lot of Paul George. I should get a lot of Lou Will and Jamal Murray based on my stat metric, right? We'll see if that works. And I'll go ahead and crank up the randomness here to see if that's actually the case. I get that the salaries also make it hard to get to Kawhi Leonard, so we might have to increase his ownership. And the salaries and the lineup combinations might not work that well. But you know what? Let's go ahead and try it anyway. So it's giving me a lot of Kawhi Leonard, it's giving me a lot of Lou Will, and it's giving me a lot of Marcus Morris. I just want you guys to keep in mind. Remember, thinking back to our leverage sheet here, right? Let's go back real quick to the leverage sheet. I had Kawhi Leonard projected. He should be around 44% owned. Okay, this is kind of ironic. Right now, I have Kawhi Leonard at 44% of my lineups, and I just crunched 100 lineups. If I was entering 100 lineups, boom, great place to start. Because based on my stat metric, these are the lineups we should be looking at. Now, I haven't really messed with any of the salaries. Yes, I haven't messed with the advanced settings. But I just wanted to show you guys that this is my mindset when going into a contest or when going into a slate. I want a lot of Kawhi Leonard because on my stat sheet he says that he's the best. I want a lot of Lou Will. And because of that, I'm forcing them basically a fake projection. Yeah, obviously Kawhi Leonard should get more than 38 points, but I'm giving them all a relative number so that I get more of that player. You could do the same thing, I'm assuming, with the projections here, right? But again, you're using the industry average at that point. You want, like, these aren't in the exact order as my rankings. Like, I want a lot of Jaylen Brown if he's ninth on my sheet. I want a lot of Zubac. I want a lot of Walker because according to the stats, it should be that way. But this is just another mindset that you guys can use. Obviously, you MMEers out there are obviously you're restricting your exposures to the trend column. I get a lot of you are doing that. You have other methods. You want a lot of your underrated guys in there. And then, let's take it a step further. We're going to talk about contest selection and what you're even doing. But I just wanted to show you that basically the rough overview of this stat metric is that mindset. Like, I want a good amount of Kawhi Leonard. I want a good amount of Paul George. I want a good amount of Lou Will. And there's no magic formula to determine this, guys. The one mistake that a lot of people use when when making a FantasyCruncher account is that they assume that if they just input the projections from my cheat sheet or just input anything in FantasyCruncher and they crunch 150 lineups, they're just going to start winning. That is not the case at all. You still have to be sharp. Like, I'm not going to sit here. Who's the chalkiest player on the slate? Let's take Jeremy Grant. Yeah, Jeremy Grant's going to be the chalkiest player on the slate. Like, obviously, if I take Jeremy Grant and I put him to about 60% ownership, and even if he does well, that's not going to be that much leverage against the field because he's already very chalky. But if I'm overweight, 44% on Kawhi Leonard, that's huge leverage. You guys have to use that mindset when looking at these lineups. Your lineups have to be contrarian. How many people are going to have Terrence Davis, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Harrell, Kemba Walker, Marcus Morris, Lou? How many people are going to have that lineup? No one on this planet is probably going to have a lineup. This is going to be a very unique lineup. And that is the concept, the mindset that you have to have when MMEing, using single entry GPPs in general. My mouth is completely dry. I just talked for like 30 straight minutes there. I'm going to be taking a drink here, and I'll get back on track. And I'm also, feel free to ask any questions. We're going to get to the contest selection here in just a second. I'm gonna need another water bottle here midstream. All right. So let's go through this question. I like this question. Can you explain the randomness percentages on FantasyCruncher? That's a great question. I got that question in Discord. What is the preferred FantasyCruncher randomness settings? What does that even mean? Why do we put randomness in there if your projections already are putting the exposures exactly where we want it? The reason why you want randomness is because you guys need to understand this concept of sports in general. The volatility that goes into sports and sports betting is unbelievable. I think the real randomness percentage is like over 1,000% each given night. Like off of actual players' projections, it's about 1,000%. In MLB, it's even higher. You guys need to have randomness included into your projections because let's just say I didn't put randomness in there. Okay, let's just because I'm a visual learner here. Let's just say I have had no randomness and I am putting 100 lineups in. There's no point on me putting 150 lineups or 100 lineups into a contest if I have 96% Marcus Morris. There's literally 0 point because at that point you're limiting yourself to a couple different lineup combinations that all include Marcus Morris. And the point of entering 150 lineups is to have exposure or as much exposure to sharp plays as possible. You can limit your player field and you can limit everything that you want. But you're essentially saying that Marcus Morris is such a good play that even with volatility of sports included, Marcus Morris is going to be in the top lineup. There's no way that you can convince me that Marcus Morris is 96% sure to be in the optimal lineup. And that's the reason why you include randomness. And that's the reason why I say there's no really rule to include randomness or a specific way to include randomness into all your settings. That's why I say 500 gives you a good amount of randomness because I usually don't like any player over 40-30%. And I actually have Marcus Morris still at 57%, so I might go back and adjust this even more. I might even crank this up to 1,000, 700, something like that. But you want a net across so many different players that makes sense. I'm not, and I didn't even limit the player pool here. But what I would probably do if I was entering a contest or entering tonight into all of these contests, I might go under this 20-minute mark just because I hate players with no upside, and all of these players below 20 minutes have virtually no upside. I might do this before I crunch my numbers. Like, this is a good strategy, too. Like, I don't want any Dozier in my lineups. I don't want, obviously, Gordon Hayward. Like, it would throw, the 500% randomness might throw Gordon Hayward into a couple lineups I might miss. So you want to put your player pool to players that make sense. Maybe I'll include it here. Maybe not including some of these guys is actually pretty dumb. So I might go down to, like, Reggie Jackson here and get rid of those guys. Even Canner here. But randomness gives you a wide net of players to choose from. That's why I like randomness. Okay? And that is the point of randomness. So many people think that there's a magic formula to figuring out your lineups and like magic formula to finding out your FantasyCruncher settings. That's not the case at all. I can guarantee you right now that every single shark has a different method of breaking down their FantasyCruncher settings. 100% guarantee you. Awesemo does it differently from Chipotle Addict, from Ship My Money, all these guys at Awesemo. They all probably have a different process. They just 100% do. I have a different process than them. So I'm just showing you guys how to get creative with FantasyCruncher. So let's talk about contest selection again. If you guys have already heard this spiel, I mean, I have about 3 videos out there on contest selection, but contest selection is absolutely everything. If you take this lineup that I just crunched, this number 1 lineup, $4,700 or $47,400, and you put this into a double up, it's not going to cash. I can almost guarantee you right now, unless you are a very lucky human being, this isn't going to cash in a cash double up contest. Okay? But this also has the potential to be very unique and thus taking down a GPP. Okay? It has a better chance. Not a very good chance, but it has a better chance to do that. This type of lineup here, this lineup with a lot of salary left over, would probably end up in a 150 max top 1% contest. It just will. That's the way that it happens. Yes, that's sure. I was hoping you guys didn't catch that. Contest selection is everything, and I have a method to doing this. So let's go single entry 10 people. Okay. First of all, you have to find a salary that makes sense. Let's actually find 49,500. Let's actually put this down to 0% randomness. Let's find the most chalk lineup on the slate right now at ownership projection. I'm sure you guys have seen this method already. The ownership projection is at 302 if you round up, and this is the chalk lineup as of right now. It's actually a pretty good lineup, I'd say. All right, so 302 is the benchmark percentage. If we are entering a GPP, let's say 10 people, you take the size of the GPP divided by 2, which is 5, and then subtract it minus the benchmark percentage, so that would get me to 297. So we're going to look for a lineup that's 297% owned. And that would be my lineup that I would be entering in that 10-person GPP, because you're trying to get a little bit different, not just a little bit, to differentiate yourself amongst the field. You don't need to get that contrarian in that kind of contest. Okay, that is a formula you must follow. So you take the benchmark lineup, which is 302, subtract it minus the contest size. So if it's 100 people, contest size divided by 2, which is 50. Take 302 minus 50. Math is hard. That would be 252, right? Yeah, 252. And that would be the combined ownership that you need to have for about each lineup, or something under 352 combined ownership to enter into that contest. You can combine the sheet that the process that I just showed you, crunch out a whole bunch of lineups, and then find a 252 overrating lineup, or a 252 combined ownership lineup, and then enter that into the GPP. All right, but that is how you do it. Okay, so that's how you construct your lineups for those really big GPPs, for the single entry, smaller GPPs, and then everything in between. But that is how you do it. So for instance, let's go back and utilize my lineup method off the sheet. I have all these projections already in. 150 lineups, randomness, let's set it to 500. And let's just say we're entering a 100-person GPP. So like I said, I'm going to be trying to find a 252% ownership lineup using my projections. Let's see if we can even get them. Sort by ownership. 252 is actually right out of the realm of what we're talking about. So like this lineup is just under 252. This would be a perfect lineup for that GPP. Smart, Van Vliet, Brown, Millsap, Zubac, Walker, Grant, Harris. This would be getting just different enough. It's just under that 252 mark. I'd actually have to turn down my randomness a little bit, or just keep crunching lineups. Let's see if I can get another lineup combination. Sort lineups, ownership. Yeah, it's still under. It's not under 252. I might have to crunch 500 lineups to get that. And that just goes to show you that pretty much the field is not agreeing with my projections and my sheet, which is great, which means there's a huge edge tonight. Like, I like a lot of these under the radar plays. So just enter bigger GPPs. That'd be the only thing that I have to say. Did we get a 252 here? No, we're still at 238, but you guys get the point. You got to look at ownership right under 252, enter that into the contest to take it down. That is just contrarian enough to take down that GPP. I might even crank up the randomness even more to get that. But yeah, that is how you do it, guys. That is how I have been utilizing my stat metric, combining it with the FantasyCruncher tool, using that to my advantage. If you guys don't like the stack metric, let me know. I think it's actually very easy to use. It's very straightforward. If you're a hand builder, like just straight up say, hey, I want to try to get these top 10 guys into my lineup, these top 8 guys in my lineup as much as I can, see what the ownership's at, the combined ownership, and then enter that into a GPP. Sit back and enjoy the show. Like even if you're just a hand builder, sitting back, only entering one lineup a night, like just make sure you're entering the right contest that makes sense. Okay? I like the Clippers tonight. I like them because one, Beverly should be limited, right? Or he's ruled out. I don't know what the deal is with him yet. I think he actually might be out. Is he ruled out yet? I haven't been paying attention. The Clippers. Lou Will's projected at 28 minutes. So I like a lot of these guards. I like the Clippers with their Vegas odds, 114.25 right now. Everything just kind of comes together with them. So I like them. All their values make sense. Kawhi Leonard continues to be under-owned on every slate. Even Paul George is under-owned on this slate. I like them all. Now, these ownerships will change, and then I will update the Patreon cheat sheet. You guys have been used to this. I will finalize it, put out the final ownerships, and then you can go back and crunch all of your lineups that same way. You guys will get better at doing this process. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them. I will go ahead and end it on that note, though. I think I pretty much covered everything I wanted to cover. Again, I will be doing all of this for NFL soon within the next, I'd say, it honestly might be today. Because I'm going to finalize my projections and do my cheat sheet on Patreon. I'm going to be using that in all my videos. I'm going to be showing you guys how to do that. Each position will have a different stat metric. Yeah, I can't wait. I cannot wait for NFL season. Same thing with the showdown lineups tomorrow. You guys will have a cheat sheet for that as well. Look out for the video. You might have seen that notification come up earlier today because we posted that last night. If you guys haven't given that a watch, feel free to do so. And I don't see any questions, so I will end it on that note, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Look out for the finalist cheat sheet a little bit later. MLB, same difference. I have the point value. I'll be adding that to that cheat sheet a little bit later in the day. It's the same exact concept. Of course, you guys have gone through all the MLB stacking videos. Feel free to go back and rewatch those if you guys need a refresher. And with all that being said, guys, have a great rest of your day, and let's cash.
And I was like, that's cool.